Today's video, we are going to talk about how to test your ads. The real way to test your ads on Google Ads to get more profit out of your Google Ads. By having and finding the better ad. There's a definite system you can follow that's repeatable and will get results every time, of which we're using on our clients' campaigns every time. And I'm going to go through exactly what that system is and how it has to do with this word called, or phrase called, statistical significance. How that's very important for you to figure out how to maximize the profit from your Google Ads campaign by having the right ad. So with that system, I'll tell you step by step how to follow the system that we're using to get profits every time. And then of course from there, how you can take things to the next level. But basically, bottom line, you have everything you need to get more profit out of the ad campaigns you're running right now today, for sure. So with that said, we'll get right into the content. Google with responsive search ads have made testing different ads dummy proof for the most part. So basically, responsive search ads, what these ads have been set up for is for the average person that's doing Google Ads that doesn't know anything about advertising basically whatsoever. And they're spending 15 minutes to set up their account. They get the user to fill in a bunch of random information to work with. And then Google's ad system can rotate through all the remnants of information that advertiser thinks that the consumer should see and find the proper way and proper order and to put them in and which ones should be used and which ones shouldn't. And it actually does it pretty well over time. Problem with this is it's going to take forever for Google's system to figure out the best way to display an ad for a person because they don't have any context. All they can do is through brute force test all the combinations. And when you're talking about a little bit of traffic, a few hundred clicks, and you gave the system 25 things, which there's 1,000 ways to arrange the text and description and all that. It's going to take 3 years before they figure out what's the best ad to show to the consumer that's actually going to perform well and can beat your competition. So you don't want to do that. So you could do okay eventually getting results with that method. You can do better much, much quicker if you were to do testing on your own. Come up with your own ad using this Aida model that we're always using on our clients' campaigns. It's a model that's been around for 50 plus years. And so it's not my model, but it just always works. It gets you to the end goal of finding the ad that's going to kick the crap out of all your competition. And because ultimately there's 4 ads at the top of Google, whoever's ad gets the highest click-through rate is going to be the person who makes most, if not all, the money, because ultimately 80% of the people that do Google Ads never make any money or even a little bit more, because Google will set up the system so that if you're not in the very top of the top 10 or 20% in terms of your click-through rate and your landing page conversion rate or where you're sending traffic to, they're not going to give you a really good rate per click. And you need a good rate per click in order to get an ROI after all your expenses. Not to mention, with 10 ads cycling in and out of the top 4 spots, you're not going to get shown a lot if they find your ad doesn't get a good click-through rate, because they're trying to show the ad with the highest click-through rate to people, because that gives their users the best overall experience and wanting to see and click on ads in the future. So your 100% your goal has to be, after all the individual minutiae is worked out of your plan, you got to have an ad that gets you in the top 10% in terms of click-through rate, top 10% in terms of conversion rate on the traffic. You do those 2 things, you're going to make millions of dollars with your ads long term, because you're able to extract more value out of a click than your competition, and you need to be there just to be able to afford the clicks in the first place, because that's how Google set things up to encourage new people to come in, see if they have a good ad. If they don't, push them out, wait for the new guys to come in, and do that over and over again so they can find out who's got the best ad in your entire market and to push that ad the most. So in order to find that best ad, you could throw all that garbage in your responsive display ad that Google asks for 10 headlines and 5 descriptions and all that, and let the ad system try to find you the best ad. But the chances are, if you're lucky, eventually you'll figure it out and you won't go broke, but probably you'll go broke before the system ever finds you the right ad. If you use this AIDA model instead, you'll probably find a pretty good ad right away. We're talking like the first month. And so what that AIDA model is, it's a model that is great for making an ad anywhere, not just on Google Ads. But AIDA stands for attention, interest, desire, action. So I gave you a sample test Google ad here to show you how this works actually in practice. If you watched my previous videos, I've mentioned time and time again, you want the user's keyword in the first part of your headline or in your first headline, and pin that as the first position in your ad, because that normally will double the click-through rate right off the top, because users, when they're trying to decide which ad to click on, the ad that has something that's closest to what they've typed in is usually what they decide to click on, because they got to narrow it down and they're thinking, what should I click on? What should I click on? And something that just matches what you typed in, it's typically statistically what you're going to click on first for the average user. So you do that, but if you could fit it in there, you'll, like, for instance, say, if you're doing a plumbing service, then, and the user types in plumbing service, you put plumbing service in your first headline, and then you put in, and then the name of the user's city. So with that said, that's a pretty good headline. That represents the A in the AIDA model, attention. How do you get someone's attention? In order to get your ad read, it has to get attention. They're looking at the ads, they're trying to decide which ad they're even going to look at, because they may not even read them all. Mentioning the user's keyword in the headline is going to get their attention quick. It makes it easy for them to decide to focus on your ad. Particularly if you're a local business and you add in the name of that, where that user's city is, or even if you're a national company saying that you have the product in their city, gets their attention right away. So that's a great way of flagging them down initially. Once you got their attention, now you have to get their interest. How do you get their interest? Well, of course, you ask your customers that, or you ask your salespeople what questions that people ask and care most about in the sales process. If you're not doing sales, that is yourself. And you find the top 2 or 3 things everybody cares about, and then that's your interest part of the ad. If you did like a mold testing service, which works good in this market, is saying $97 a test. Because what everybody wants to know in that market, most of all, is how much is this thing going to be? So we want to tell people that up front. That'll get people's interest right away. Oh, it's a decent price. Assuming we had a good price, it'll get their interest. But since we do have a good price and we know people care about this a lot, we say this up front to get their interest. Furthermore, to get their desire now, we got their interest. How do we get them to desire it? We could say 3-day results. So it's a good price, and oh, they can get it to me like really quick. I'm really interested now. The other way that you could get desires, you could say you had good reviews. But there's certain things you could do here. So you could say shipping in 2 days. So because they want the difference between interest and desire. The interest tells them the benefit. The desire tells them how they're going to be able to get that benefit quickly, better, easy, how it's going to be real to them, and focusing on that. So I'm going to get a cheap test, and I'm going to get it in 3 days. So I was interested in the cheap test. You're going to tell me I'm going to get it in 3 days? Okay, I want it now. Then furthermore, the final A in the AIDA model is the action. Action means call to action. Asking the user to buy. If you want the maximum click-through rate on your ad, you got to ask them to buy. You can't just say what it is and then nothing. So you say buy now, order now, whatever. That's what that part of the ad is for. So plumbing, since we were talking about 2 things here, I'll focus on mold testing. Mold testing in Scottsdale, $97 a test, 3-day results, order now. That's a pretty effective ad, right? gets across exactly what it is that you're offering, how you're offering it, and that you can get it right away and how to respond, right? That's what you want to do with your ad. Come up with your own AIDA model ad and start there instead of just randomly putting in a bunch of text in your responsive display ad and let Google do testing. Now, I've had several people on this channel ask me questions and ask and say, why is it that, because if you don't put a lot of headlines and descriptions in your ad strength score goes way down. And we're saying, well, what you're saying, Corey, not putting in the full amount of headlines, that ad strength of my ad is way down. And what I'm telling you here, like I said before, that ad strength doesn't mean nothing about in terms of how much money you're going to make. It's a vanity metric. It doesn't actually, okay, I will admit, you'll get shown a little bit more initially if you have a higher ad strength, but that means nothing if your click-through rate isn't higher, because ultimately at the end of the day, bottom line, Google's ad system actually cares about click-through rate. So if you give it more data and you're the average novice advertiser, they know having more information is going to be able to get you a higher click-through rate than if you gave them less information. But if you actually know how to write an ad, giving them more information is not going to get you a higher click-through rate. So in other words, they're by default optimizing for the person who doesn't know how to write an ad. When you do know how to write an ad, you're actually giving Google what they want quicker or better, even though their system isn't adapted to handle a good ad, because they're not used to somebody giving them 3 headlines, and those are the exact 3 headlines you need to use, if you follow my drift here. So don't worry about the ad strength indicator, because your ads with this model will generally get really good results anyway right away. And as soon as they see your ad gets 2-3 times higher click-through rate than the average 3% click-through rate everybody else gets, they're not going to give a shit that your ad strength score is low. They just aren't, because they want click-through rate. So at first you'll get shown a little bit slower. As soon as they realize you have a 7, 8, 9, 10% click-through rate, when the average person's getting 3, they're going to say, who gives a shit about the ad strength score? We'll show this baby as many times as we can. And that's why you're going to ignore the ad strength score. So that said, once you've done this, obviously, unless you've written hundreds and hundreds of ads like I have, you're not going to know the absolute best things to put in that ad for the AIDA ad that you created. You could do your research on your customers, find out what they want most of all. Even still, you've done really good research. You're not going to get it perfect. So what you do, once you've done this, which will already get you good results from day one, practically speaking, you're going to test each one of these individual letters, AIDA. So you'll start with attention. Okay, how do we take the first headline that focuses on the first A and try something else and see if we can get a higher click-through rate because we put an even better attention grabber. And you test that against your original ad, and you see if your new ad will get a higher click-through rate. Once you've found you basically can't beat the results on the A part of the formula, then you move on to the interest part of the formula and split test and try to come up with a new interest part of the formula that works better than the one that you had. Then you do this D the same way and then A the same way, the final A. And then through that process, you'll find out the perfect ad by actually, because each ad needs the 4 same key components, because that's what makes up a great ad and has for a long time. You'll find each with the most ideal thing to say for each component of that AIDA ad, and then you'll get the most click-through rate possible. So you might start out with 7% click-through rate, but you'll get to 11 by figuring out, and after you've tested each one of these AIDA components of the ad. So you start from the top always, first A, and then you test the I, then the D, then the final A, and that order is the best, quickest way to get to the top that I know of. And when you're testing, there's something called statistical significance here. If you want to know if something you have won or not, you got to use statistical significance to know if you really won or not. Because what a lot of people will do is they'll do some of the testing that I'm mentioning here, and they'll get 30 clicks on an ad, and they'll think that the ad that they had, they're a genius, their ad works twice as good as the other ad, and then they'll stop their test then. You need a certain amount of minimum data on your test to know if your test ad is better than your control ad. Otherwise, you're going to make mistakes, and you're not going to end up with the end result like I'm talking about, where you're for sure going to end up with lifelong highest possible click-through rates on your ads in your account, which are going to give you obviously more of the market share of the people searching, but way less cost per click, and you're going to get shown way more by Google's ad system doing that. So what you do is you go and you use a statistical significance calculator. You Google that statistical significance calculator, and then when you're running your test, it asks for the clicks and the impressions. And so you do your testing, clicks and impressions, and then the ad that you were running before, clicks and impressions. So let's say you run your new test ad for a month. You take the clicks and impressions for that month, you put it in your statistical significance calculator, and then the other ad that was running from before, your control ad, you do the same thing there. For that same month, you put the clicks and impressions in there, and then you see if the statistical significance calculator has said that you have over 90% statistical significance in your test result. If you have not, you keep running the test until you have 90% plus statistical significance, because that's going to be the minimum threshold where you could definitively count on the test you did actually being something that's going to pan out over the long run, over thousands and thousands of clicks. In other words, the smaller amount of clicks you have, the less likely the data that you have that's showing that one thing won over another it's more likely to be not correct, if you will. Whereas the more data you have, the more likely your test, as it looks, will be correct long term. So you use the statistical significance calculator to find out if you really have something that's a winner or not. And with that said, once you've gotten this far, now this is the formula within 3 months, and actually right away have a decent ad that'll probably double the click-through rate that the average person has, but then quadruple it once you get done with my testing here. Even then, even though you're going to have a fantastic ad, you're probably going to for sure have the best ad in your market already. You could actually do a bit better than that if you use the responsive display ads with all the headlines and stuff. Going back to that. Now, I know it sounds like I'm contradicting myself here, but what you do is with all the information you learned here, like your top headlines and your top descriptions along with that, I encourage you in every ad group to put all of those into a responsive display ad and let Google take your best ad and also run the responsive search ad that you put a bunch of the most winning headlines and stuff in there to run side by side and see if the responsive display ad can beat the best ad that you can come up with using the Aida model. And the reason for this is the one good thing about the responsive search ads that Google has is they actually don't have one version of that ad for everybody, like some people think. Ultimately, even if you're targeting one keyword in that ad group, which you should be doing, by the way, which I talk about all the time on this channel, how that doubles your click-through rate when you could do that and triples the amount of money you can make. But even if you just have one keyword in an ad group and you put 10 headlines in an ad and 5 descriptions, the person searching for that keyword, they look at the different people searching for that keyword, male, female, people searching during the day versus night, weekends versus during the weekdays, and they see which version of that ad with what headlines work better for the people that search at nighttime versus daytime, or male versus female. And so ultimately what they come up with is their own formula for each type of person who searches for that keyword. So no matter how good your ad is, a lot of times you're still not going to be able to do better than Google's system at finding the perfect combination of headlines of the top headlines that worked for the each user type based upon, you know, their behaviors, their demographics, and so forth. So if you get your click-through rate up to 15% using my methods here, which is a regular thing that we're able to achieve for clients at our firm, you could put the responsive display ad with all your headlines and descriptions in there that worked pretty good and that you found during your testing worked okay. And then you let Google do some testing of their own at the same time. And so your click-through rate might go from 15 down to like, you know, 9 or 10 for a while, because Google's using that new ad and trying to figure out if that new ad that you put all the headlines and description in there could work better. And eventually though, because you've done the secondary ad with all the headlines and descriptions, instead of just being able to be 15% is all you're ever going to get for a click-through rate, you might be able to get 21% click-through rate, because after a few thousand clicks, Google's figured out what kind of works good for male versus female and so forth, where, you know, females didn't like your ad, but some combination of headlines and descriptions you gave them in the responsive display ad that you also had in your ad group actually beat the ad that you have here, because females just respond to something that's inherently different than what, you know, males respond to, given males are 70% of your clicks. So your test results are showing you a certain headline that you should run for everybody because it gets you the most click-through rate, assuming you're treating everybody the same and it's showing for everybody. But when you show for females, a certain other headline is going to work better. And so Google is going to figure that out for you with that secondary responsive search ad that has all your best headlines and best descriptions in it. So I'm never going to want to settle for the, you know, good enough. I always want the maximum click-through rate I can, because, you know, in other words, I'll take a short-term hit on click-through rates if I could get another 30% click-through rates forever once Google has figured out what headlines work for female versus male, like the scenario I gave you, because that's going to mean another, you know, extra $1 million a year in sales once I'm scaled up at capacity with my Google Ads account. So why would you want to throw $1 million a year away in extra sales because you didn't want to take a short-term hit in your click-through rate, having to do a little bit more testing once you've found an ad that gets you 10-15% click-through rate already, so that you can't get the 20% click-through rate you would have had if you would have took a short-term hit in your conversion rate, so that you could do the rest of your testing, which is the testing that Google does with their own ad serving algorithm, figuring out of the people that you're going after, which one should see one version of a headline versus another. So anyway, that's kind of how the responsive search ads is supposed to work, even though it's going to take forever. So a good middle ground is to come up with a really good ad up front yourself using this AIDA model. And then long term, let's say over the next couple of years, you let Google do its thing with the responsive display ad, rotating out headlines and descriptions for different people, and eventually figuring out something that works for some people really, really well, if you will. So, and so that your ad keeps performing for certain people, but other people, Google's figured out an even better way to put an ad in front of those exact people that you were never going to get with your ad testing method here that I gave you up front, the AIDA ad testing and development model. So hopefully that makes sense. Don't worry about ad strength. You know, use your AIDA model up front to make some quick money, get your campaigns up and profitable in a month or two. Start to do some long-term testing with the responsive display ads and get the full benefit of that over long-term once you're though already making money with the AIDA model. That's the culmination and summary of everything that I was trying to explain on today's video. That said, if you liked the video, I'd appreciate it if you give it a like and consider subscribing, as I have a ton of other content on this channel that is just as good as what you've seen here. If you like the channel, I also got a blog at guaranteeppc.com/blog, where it's a lot more advice from myself on how to guarantee results on your Google ads, Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, and so forth, campaigns as well. If you have any questions, by the way, about anything I covered or any PPC questions, really, leave me a comment below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel, usually within a couple days' time. If you're looking for somebody that can really get results, and I mean really get results on your Google ads, Facebook ads, or other PPC campaigns, you should reach out to my firm, as we offer actual guaranteed results for our clients at our firm. We're the only ones doing it in our whole PPC management space, where you basically, if you're getting this much sales now, you're making $5,000 a month now, we could take you to $10,000 a month in profit for free as doing a trial run with our agency, and then as a way for us to develop a relationship, a long-term relationship with you. And that's how we do business here. So if you're plateaued on your results or you don't have time to get more results, we'll scale your campaign for you. We'll even show you some results up front without taking any fees up front necessarily, as long as you're willing to pay us a fair fee once we get you some initial traction. We could also put new campaigns together as well, by the way, and can take our fees once we get a little bit of initial proof of concept going on your campaign. So anyway, we don't take on everybody, but we can look over your campaigns and I can speak with you potentially on what you're trying to do. You have to reach out to my firm at guaranteedppc.com to find out if we can work with you and how much results we can actually provide, because we estimate that for you up front on our proposal. So with that said, I'll wrap it up. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. It was educational to you, and hope to see you on the next one. See you later.